The museum's emergency alarm shattered the silence just seconds before the nation's most valuable civil rights exhibition opened to thousands of visitors. Every entrance instantly locked as a frightened senator screamed that his 12-year-old granddaughter had completely disappeared without leaving behind a single clue. Marcus Reed quietly placed his restoration tools onto a nearby workbench before running toward the growing crowd. He had restored priceless historical artifacts inside the museum for 14 years, and knew every hidden conservation hallway beneath the building better than anyone alive. The senator struggled to remain calm while security officers asked questions about his granddaughter's clothes, height, and last location. She had been wearing a blue jacket while carrying a small notebook. Every passing second made the crowded museum feel strangely silent. Museum security immediately closed every gallery, while visitors remained inside the building. Guards searched exhibition halls, gift shops, theaters, storage rooms, and educational centers. Parents tightly held their children's hands as whispers spread across the enormous marble corridors throughout the historic museum. Marcus quietly asked where the young girl had last been seen. The senator pointed toward the newly restored Civil Rights Gallery, where Marcus had spent 6 months repairing fragile photographs, handwritten letters, and priceless historical documents scheduled for today's grand opening ceremony. Before Marcus could continue speaking, an expensive-looking visitor suddenly stepped forward and pointed directly toward him. His loud voice echoed through the gallery. "I saw that black restoration worker talking to the senator's granddaughter only a few minutes before she disappeared." The crowded museum instantly became silent. Every visitor slowly turned toward Marcus, while several security officers immediately changed direction and walked toward him instead of continuing their search through the surrounding exhibition rooms. Fear quietly replaced reason inside the magnificent building. Marcus remained completely calm despite hundreds of eyes watching him. "She asked me who restored Dr. King's handwritten speech." His steady voice never changed. "I answered her question and returned to protecting the original documents inside the conservation laboratory." The visitor folded his arms confidently before speaking again. That conversation looked suspicious. Marcus quietly looked into his eyes before asking one simple question. "What exactly did you see that was suspicious?" The man opened his mouth but could not honestly answer. The chief of museum security politely asked Marcus to remain nearby until additional questions could be completed. Marcus glanced toward the restricted conservation hallway before suddenly noticing one important detail that immediately changed the expression across his normally peaceful face. Earlier that morning, Marcus repaired a security sensor protecting the museum's underground conservation tunnels. During testing, one emergency door repeatedly failed to lock correctly before suddenly sealing itself without warning. Marcus immediately reported the dangerous malfunction to museum management. Marcus quickly pointed toward the underground conservation entrance. "Search the restoration tunnels first." The security chief looked surprised before asking why. Marcus answered immediately. "If that emergency door closed again, someone inside could become trapped where almost nobody ever walks." The security chief hesitated while another officer quietly reminded him they still needed to finish questioning Marcus. Those precious seconds frustrated Marcus because he understood something everyone else overlooked. Time mattered much more than assumptions whenever frightened children disappeared. Marcus picked up his emergency access keys before hurrying toward the underground conservation corridor. 2 museum guards followed closely behind while the senator and his family desperately hurried beside them. Every heartbeat seemed louder inside the silent marble hallway leading beneath the museum. The underground conservation tunnels stretched quietly beneath the museum, like a forgotten underground city. Climate-controlled rooms protected priceless American history, while narrow service hallways connected restoration laboratories, storage vaults, and preservation chambers hidden completely beneath public exhibition galleries above. Marcus stopped beside a heavy reinforced conservation door before placing one hand against the cold steel surface. Everyone remained silent while he carefully listened through the thick metal. For several long moments he heard nothing except softly humming climate control equipment. Then a faint, frightened voice whispered through the silence, "Please, somebody." Marcus immediately recognized it as the missing girl's voice. Without wasting another second, he inserted his emergency master key before manually releasing the damaged electronic locking system. The heavy conservation door slowly opened with a deep metallic sound that echoed throughout the underground hallway. Beyond the doorway sat the frightened young girl beside several wooden shipping crates containing priceless historical artifacts, awaiting restoration. She tightly hugged her notebook while tears streamed down her face after spending nearly 30 terrifying minutes completely alone inside the secured conservation chamber. The moment she recognized Marcus, she immediately stood and ran toward him. Without saying a word, she wrapped both arms tightly around him while crying with relief. Marcus gently smiled before quietly saying, "I promised someone would come looking for you." Marcus carefully walked the young girl back through the conservation tunnel while she refused to let go of his hand. Behind them, museum guards silently followed, already realizing how close they had come to searching the wrong person, instead of the right place. The senator saw his granddaughter first. He immediately ran forward before dropping onto one knee and hugging her so tightly that neither of them could speak. Visitors watching nearby quietly wiped tears from their eyes as relief replaced fear throughout the museum. The young girl suddenly turned toward Marcus while still holding her grandfather's hand. Looking directly at everyone surrounding them, she proudly declared, "He found me because he remembered the broken door." Nobody else even knew this place existed. The museum hallway became completely silent after the young girl's words. Visitors slowly looked toward Marcus, with expressions very different from only a few minutes earlier. Fear had disappeared from their faces, replaced by embarrassment that nobody could easily hide. The chief of museum security immediately ordered every nearby surveillance recording to be reviewed. Within minutes, technicians displayed the footage across the museum's security center. Every camera confirmed Marcus had simply answered the girl's historical question before returning to restoration work. Another camera revealed something nobody expected. Curious about the conservation laboratory, the young girl quietly followed a restoration cart through the partially opened emergency door. Moments later, the damaged electronic system suddenly activated and locked her inside the restricted preservation chamber. The wealthy visitor who first accused Marcus watched every second of the recording without speaking. His confidence disappeared completely as the truth unfolded. He slowly lowered his head because he finally realized his accusation came entirely from assumption instead of evidence. The museum director quietly opened Marcus's maintenance report submitted before sunrise. Across the inspection document appeared one clear warning: emergency conservation door locking system malfunctioning. Immediate replacement recommended before today's public exhibition begins. Every person inside the security office stared silently at the report. Beneath Marcus's warning appeared another note entered by museum administration only 2 hours earlier. Repair delayed until next scheduled maintenance to avoid interrupting the exhibition. Opening ceremony attended by government officials and international guests. The museum director slowly closed the report before looking directly toward Marcus. "You warned every one of us." Marcus quietly nodded. "I did." The director lowered his eyes before admitting, "We protected today's schedule more carefully than tomorrow's safety." The chief of security removed his badge from his jacket before stepping closer to Marcus. "Mr. Reed, I owe you more than an apology." Marcus calmly answered, "The child is safe. That's what matters." The officer quietly replied, "No. Today showed us something much bigger." Marcus looked around the room before speaking softly. When fear entered this museum, history stopped teaching people. They stopped searching for facts and started searching for someone to blame. Nobody interrupted because every person understood exactly what he meant. The young girl quietly approached Marcus, carrying her small notebook. She carefully opened one blank page before asking, "Would you write your name here?" Marcus smiled warmly before writing only 2 words: "Keep learning." The girl looked surprised before smiling brightly. She gently closed the notebook and hugged it tightly against her chest. "I'll remember those words forever." Marcus quietly laughed. "Then remember something else too." She looked up curiously. "Never let someone's appearance become your evidence. Let truth speak first." The museum director gathered every employee inside the Grand Central Hall before visitors left for the evening. Standing beneath the enormous glass ceiling, he held Marcus's original maintenance report high enough for everyone to see without speaking for several long seconds. Finally, he broke the silence. "This paper warned us before the emergency happened." He paused briefly. Ignoring it nearly cost a child her life. Every employee remained completely still because nobody could argue with the painful truth written across the inspection report. The director then invited Marcus onto the stage. Marcus hesitated because public attention never interested him. After employees encouraged him with warm applause, he quietly walked forward while keeping the same calm expression that never changed throughout the entire frightening day. Marcus looked across the crowded hall before speaking. "History isn't only inside these display cases." His gentle voice echoed through the magnificent museum. "History is also created by the choices we make today when people need fairness instead of fear." The audience became completely silent. Even visitors preparing to leave stopped walking so they could hear every word. Marcus continued softly, "Children watch how adults treat one another. That's how tomorrow's history quietly begins." The young girl suddenly walked onto the stage carrying a small gift box from the museum store. Smiling proudly, she handed it to Marcus. Inside rested a miniature bronze Liberty Bell with a tiny engraved stand beneath it. Marcus looked surprised before asking, "Why this one?" The young girl smiled brightly. "Because freedom means people should be judged by the truth, not by fear." Several employees quietly wiped tears from their eyes after hearing her simple answer. Her grandfather slowly walked beside Marcus before extending his hand. "I spent my career writing laws about justice," he admitted. "Today you reminded me that justice begins long before any courtroom." It begins with the first decision people make. Marcus warmly shook his hand before quietly replying, "Justice begins the moment we choose to keep searching instead of judging." The senator nodded with deep respect because he knew those simple words carried more meaning than any speech he had ever delivered. As evening settled over Washington, the museum reopened every gallery. Families once again admired priceless pieces of American history, while children laughed through the exhibits. Yet everyone who witnessed that extraordinary day carried home a lesson far more valuable than anything displayed behind glass. The following morning, Marcus returned to his restoration workshop before sunrise. Waiting beside his tools rested another small envelope. Inside was the young girl's notebook page, carefully photocopied, with one handwritten sentence beneath Marcus's signature. It read, "The greatest thing you restored wasn't history. It was our faith in each other." Marcus quietly folded the page and placed it beside the miniature Liberty Bell inside his toolbox. They were simple reminders that kindness rarely made headlines, yet it often changed lives forever. Years later, visitors would remember the famous exhibition and the priceless artifacts they admired inside the museum. But one young girl would always remember something far more important. She would remember the quiet black restoration specialist who understood history well enough to stop repeating its mistakes. And everyone who stood inside that museum on that unforgettable afternoon carried home the same truth. Fear searched for a suspect. Truth searched for a child. Kindness found both the child and the truth.